Hello and welcome to Geek Chic, created for you because intelligent conversation never goes out of style. This is the home for business brain candy. On Geek Chic, we invite a subject matter experts in to give us their experience, their knowledge, and a very different view of a subject that could have really significant impact to your business. This podcast is brought to you from Sales Geek Essex in partnership with DMB Films, the home for professional podcast filming. Links to all of this will be in our About section. This episode of Cerebral Sweetness, I have the most amazing Dave Mercado, who arguably is currently the largest master franchisee owner in the geek family. So fellow geeks, we're all about the geeks in over Christmas, our festive fun. Basically the whole of Manchester, Bolton, Bury, Oldham, Rochdale, and a few other things that I couldn't remember. You are one of the OG franchisees. You were around and about when this was an idea in Mr. Few's mind and over the bar and over drinks and what have you. But you are also a massive fitness enthusiast, which I always admire, and an ex-professional sportsman. And we're going to be talking today about how to be extraordinary and the role that consistency and balance plays in that focus. You see? It's going to be brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa,
for agreeing to come on this platform and to speak about.
It's such a nice introduction.
You didn't pay me, it's all right. I always say that I do my introduction.
I'll try and do you justice.
I love that. So we're going to be talking today about how to be extraordinary and the role of consistency and balance in this. And we've just thrown a few, what I usually do is create a whole load of questions, but what we've done is kind of thrown out some topic areas. And the first one I've got on my list here is limitless. Tell me what that means to you.
So I kind of like the word limitless. Recently it's something that I've thought a lot about because, I'm a small business owner. We help small business owners grow and scale. And I feel like a mistake that people make is they put a limit on it. There was always somebody who achieved something, they got to a certain point, and then that was like kind of a limit. And then we then aspire to kind of be there, or the more ambitious ones amongst us.
The dreamers.
Aspire to kind of get to that limit. But I think putting like a limit on something is like a big mistake. You actually put yourself in like a deficit if you go, well, that's my limit. We talk about Roger Bannister a lot and sort of breaking limits and the 4-minute mile. Yeah. It's like, that was like the limit. And then somebody achieved it, 4-minute mile, amazing. But then that was the limit. But as soon as somebody realized that the limit could be achieved, then what's the next thing then? Then all of a sudden, somebody did something else and somebody did something else. You kind of see it. I love sports, and our sports related to business, our sports related to culture. But, as we evolve, as we get better, as we learn, as we use tools around us, data sets, equipment gets better, as we evolve in business, in anything, look at the 100-meter sprinters. And there's only going to be a matter of time before Usain Bolt's record gets broken. The hot guy at the moment is this guy called Noah Lyles. There's a great documentary called Sprint. And you just see him getting closer and closer and closer, and they push the limits. People used to set, the scientists would set a limit. If you were a 100-meter sprinter, you couldn't be tall because you needed a short stride length for faster. You needed to be lowest center of gravity to the ground, whatever. Usain Bolt broke the mold. If you look at the race, you take a step back and you look at them run down that 100-meter track. He's head and shoulders over everybody. He is not the ideal, or what they would say was the ideal guy. So, all of a sudden, we didn't think of that, did we? Let's try and take a step back and look at things like more dynamically, subjectively, and go, just because somebody said this was the right way to do something, is that the actual right way? Because now you've done something totally different. But, to kind of bring it back to that limit thing, I think if you put limits on something, you are in a huge deficit. And limitless to me is not ever creating a limit. What I want to see what limits can be broken, where you can kind of go with it. And I don't even really want to know what I can achieve now. I mean, it's good to set goals and it's good to set benchmarks. If you can achieve something as a benchmark, then you've kind of got like a reset point and somewhere to go from. But I always want to think about, what could my future self achieve?
Yes.
Not what am I going to achieve now? And where is that limit? I'm never going to set a limit. For me, it's always going to be limitless because I'm always going to be chasing, I'm always going to be striving, I'm always going to be trying to be better, not than the person that I was yesterday, but I'm going to always try and be better than that person that I can envision myself being the best of. So if I can envision myself on my best day being the best that I could be, that's who I'm trying to be better than.
Yeah.
And for me, it's setting the benchmark and going, okay, where's the next benchmark? Not necessarily where's the limit. And I feel like it's about being limitless.
Yeah.
And with all the tools and things that we learn, the amazing experienced people around us, that's the beauty about being in a team for me with team sports. And that's a massive thing for me, like in Sales Geek. You've got access to all of these amazing people around you, just as experienced, if not more experienced, a lot of them. And you're a team and you've got access to all these different things, and you there's no reason to set a limit and be limitless. I suppose that's what it kind of means for me.
It's the rate at which you grow and accelerate, right? Because like if you are the sum of all of the people, the people that you surround yourself with, and like you say, the power of the geek thing is all around the community, the people that are in that community, the incredible humans that are in there, the incredible brains that are in there, the abilities, the success, and you sit in that and you go, wow, at that point you are accelerating because you are around people who are all in that kind of limitless mindset, but it's a bit, it kind of makes your brain hurt, right? Because we all sit there and we talk about goals and we talk about this and we talk about that, and then you reach the goal and then what? But just being able to, like, it made my brain hurt thinking about it. It's almost like thinking about the universe, the size of the universe.
Yeah.
When you start thinking about limitless, when you're thinking about...
You can't fathom how big that is.
No.
You can't make rational sense of it.
No.
So your brain always just goes...
No.
You get lost, don't you?
Yeah,
but I think as well, another thing that it makes me think of is, as you grow, as you get more experienced, as you get a little bit wiser.
Yes.
And especially the more humble you can be and the more self-aware you can be. Again, thinking with limits, I think a big mistake that I see with small business owners, myself included, I've made this mistake many times, but I'd like to think, I work really hard on self-awareness, and I work really hard on not setting those limits around the self-awareness.
Okay.
Nobody knows the answer to everything.
No.
And even if you think you know the answer, that's the answer now. Like, is that the limit, or, are there different answers to it? So I think if you can actually have done some work on self-awareness, on being a little bit more humble, be open to listening to other people's perspectives.
Yes.
And I will listen to anybody. I may not always agree with someone, but there's always like something that you can learn.
Yes. Absolutely.
And a lot of mistakes that I see is people set limits, like not only the high limit, but even if you've got peers amongst yourself, like we are at Sales Geek, it's like having those limits on the side. I want to listen to the way somebody does something that's wildly different to me, because there's going to be something there for me to learn. And I'm not going to set the limit, and I'm not going to just totally dismiss it and go, actually, my way is the right way, and I'm never going to listen to anything you say because I'm getting better results.
Why do you think people do that?
I think it's self-awareness. I think people haven't. I think it's human nature. It's a protective mechanism, and I think it's also
insecurity.
It's ego-led. It might be insecurity. I'm not saying that it is or not, but I think it's different for everybody, and I think that comes with inward reflection and self-awareness. Everybody's going to have things subconsciously that the whatever it is in the current moment becomes familiar to you, and it sort of brings that out, and you might not be aware of it. It might be something totally subconscious, and it's your mind's way of putting up a wall of defense and protection. And with business owners, they're typically a little bit more dominant, a little bit more influential, and it becomes like an ego thing. You know, you want to be the top dog if you're the business owner. People are looking to you for guidance.
It's a hard place,
and
right?
It's very difficult to be humble sometimes. It's very difficult to show empathy, and it's very difficult to trust. You know, you've got to this point in life where you've perhaps opened a business, you've done all these things that said, you know, I've done all these things that's got me to here. I've not done this, and I've not done this, and I've not done this. I'm not going to do that again, because that's now I'm protecting myself. And it's kind of like, you know, it's having that vulnerability to just let your guard down. Remove those limits, and you know what, you might actually just learn something, and you will break the limit and become limitless if you have the ability and the awareness to do that. It's not easy, but I think it's got to kind of start with that with yourself. It's got to start with that relationship with yourself, and I think when you start to do that, you unlock this different level. You're able to empathize with people more. You're able to create a much more engaging and safe space, and you can and the level of communication just totally rises, and it's all about removing those limits.
Absolutely. I love the fact that you spoke about vulnerability. My absolute go-to when it comes to, you know, the emotional literacy and maturity and the way we have a relationship with ourselves. Vulnerability. Brené Brown knocks it out of the park. Her work, her research on that field just has completely changed the way I think about myself. And we are, you know, when you're forging forwards, when you're more dominant, when you're, you know, a fortress. You know, we especially women in business. I mean, you know, we build ourselves up to be this fortress. We have to be hard. We have to be resilient. We have to do all of these things. And what you actually end up thinking and feeling when you have a better relationship, where you're not pushing all of the time, when you actually sit and stop and have that relationship with yourself, it's very different. And it's not about pushing and hitting harder and all of those sort of things. It's about almost the opposite, right? It's about vulnerability. It's about being open. It's about welcoming things to you rather than fighting for something. And I think that emotional maturity and literacy, that EQ piece, is possibly one of the most profound journeys you can go on, but also one of the most incredible tools you use for your business. You know, the psychological safety, the having different conversations, having conversations on a completely different level. You know, it really makes a massive, massive difference. I love the way that you've kind of portrayed that.
I think for me, I was really fortunate, actually. And I think the next generation will be culturally very, very different. I think this generation of business owners, people, you know, if you kind of had to just kind of put it into tiers, there's a lot more younger business owners these days. There's a lot more, you know, different industries recently opened up with the big tectonic shifts, like your social media platforms and things that didn't exist, you know, 10, 15 years ago. So there's completely different revenue streams now. You know, the way the world accesses things. The role of the salesman and where we sort of join that sort of salesperson interact is completely different now than it was 10 or 15 years ago. But I think I was really fortunate where, you know, without trying to sound stereotypical, when I was, you know, serving my time as a salesperson, and I was, you know, just the young sales guy on the road learning my craft, I was actually just in a really fortunate position where I worked in quite a male-dominated industry. It was manufacturer-led industry, where I was a sales guy, but I was lucky enough to have really strong, empowering female leadership.
Oh, really?
So that kind of really molded me, and I like to think that I'm fortunate because I've kind of seen it from sort of both sides. And stereotypically, women are naturally a little bit more empathetic. And, you know, I'm not sure if that's going to be like the next kind of cultural generation, because I think the roles are a lot more fairly split now in terms of work balance, but also like home balance. You get a lot more sort of home dads and things these days, when it was, you know, not kind of seen as the masculine thing.
No.
I really feel like, you know, that's a little bit more, that's been sort of dropped recently. And again, in the workplace, you know, like equality and different levels of roles. But when it wasn't, when it was so dominated in one way in the workspace and so dominated in one way in the home space 20 years ago, I was really fortunate to have those big, strong, corporate, multi-million pound businesses with female empowerment and female leadership, and I learned so much from it. And I really feel like I was lucky, kind of in a way, because I've now been able to, you know, get a head start and pull that into what I do now. Whereas I feel like the world's only kind of just catching up with that now, only.
Yeah. We talk all the time about a new way of selling, transforming the way the world perceives sales, making it human, you know, because in the end of the day, all sales is building relationships with trust and integrity, right? It's authenticity, it's all of those things. It's not about, you know, the ruses or the quips or the how or the what, or just be, you know, to say this 5 times, or just, you know, it's not about that anymore. You know, and people are, I think we're ahead of the game. I genuinely think we're ahead of the game when we're, you know, really changing the way that sales is done, because it's always been like a dirty word or a dirty act. You know, we've all been sold too badly, but I think absolutely we're ahead of the game, and knowing it's about humans connecting with humans and having a way to do that.
I think, I mean, you talk a lot about like pull, not push, good leadership in general.
My book, it's in there.
Good leadership in general is, you know, is a good leader is somebody that people want to follow, that they're inspired by. You know, it's somebody that's promoting, somebody that's, you know, persuasive, but in a good way, in an ethical way. And I think that kind of like old school 80s
command
hard,
control,
you know, that real like push mentality, where sales kind of got its dirty word for it. It was unethical, it was pushy. We started creating all these different names because we were ashamed to have the word sales in our title somewhere. Like, you know, all of that stuff that kind of like existed. Now we have this like real opportunity to with that empathetic mindset and empathetic self-awareness and emotional intelligence in mind, the best companies are typically the ones with the best culture, the ones that people want to follow. The best brands are the brands that command that following naturally, because people associate themselves with it. They want to be a part of it. You know, we talk about, you know, kind of like creating this tribe, creating this following, and you know, good culture in businesses is built on all those things we seek naturally as human beings. We seek safety, we seek trust. We want to be naturally, we want to be part of something. And that's what good leadership is. And I think in the 80s it wasn't. It was very forceful. You were told what you were doing. It was really led with like KPIs that were unrealistic. Now we have this like real opportunity to like tap into actually what it is that we naturally are drawn to as a human being. And if you can create that level of empathy, that level of trust, that space where people feel that they can express themselves in a safe way, all of a sudden you've got a far different culture, and you've got a much stronger leadership, because people want to follow, they want to be involved, they want to be a part of it. And you know, they aren't just doing it to take home a paycheck. These days they aren't, you know, they're doing something to change the world.
Definitely. I think, you know, that command control past, you know, is the same as the sales past, right? Everything else is very toxic, you know, downward force, complete control, because people lack trust. And the thing is, the counterintuitive thing is that to be able to gain trust, you have to trust the people. And there are so many business owners and leaders and managers out there who have a different narrative around the people that are around them, the people who work with them. And it's a difficult one to break, right?
So I think my own personal experience and my own personal opinion, because I have been that guy, right? I have been that sales
We've all been that guy, yeah.
You know, and I think that only comes from that level of mistrust with the employees, feeling like they have to put these big restrictions in place, feeling like they have to have like these really strict KPIs and that kind of thing, where there's no empathy involved whatsoever, and you just sort of become a number in that big corporate that's you know, so unrewarding. I think it's the same thing, but it's on both sides. Not only does the employee and the team member that should be somebody that's valued, not only do they feel like mistrust and not a safe place, that manager as well, or that sales director, or that business owner as well, they don't trust themselves.
No.
They haven't done that inward reflection, and if they can't trust themselves, if they can't do that work themselves, they're never going to be able to trust anybody else.
Starts with
and
you,
it's such a difficult thing, because they will put up this big limit, and they'll put up these big walls, because that's what's kept them safe this whole way through life, all these years, to get to the position that they've got, you know, and then a well-respected position, leader of a company, in charge of a division of people,
right?
But really, they don't trust themselves. So if they don't trust themselves, they can't trust anybody else. And they themselves don't feel safe.
Yes.
So how can they create an environment, at least for somebody else to create a good environment for themselves, which should be your team?
Yeah, and we work with business leaders, business owners who are command and control, and who find it really, really difficult to change. I mean, that's a complete change, right? And as many people as I introduced to Brandon going, you know, have a look at Dare to Lead, have a look at these things, have a look at a different way of viewing things. There are a lot of people who can't get over that.
But again, drawing it back to limits, that's because they've got these limits there, and they believe that that's where it is.
Yeah.
They will not and won't drop that defense until they start having this better trusting relationship with themselves. They need to get into a vulnerable position, and they need to just hold their hands up and go, well, if it fails, that's okay. It's okay to fail, because I'll learn something from it, and I'll go again.
Because we don't learn anything from things we do right? We're risk averse. Our brains do not work that shit out, right? We learn by the things we do wrong, you know, and it's those profound lessons that change who we are. And when you hit a boundary and hit a barrier, you know, you can be a fortress for so long, but there will be something that puts you in a position that you have to address yourself, right? And if you don't do it yourself, you'll be forced to do it.
I think it's like a combination of things, actually. I know you typically learn the most from failing, because you'll learn the most lessons. Everybody's different, and you kind of learn what works for you. But one example recently, I've done a lot of reading on running, because I've decided I'm going to run a marathon.
That's bonkers. I can't even get my head around that.
I think for the first run that I went on, like an actual run rather than running around a sports pitch, like an actual run, was August. I'd never run before August, and I set off, and I had to sit down less than a kilometre into the run. So I had never run so long.
I'm really proud you got to a kilometre, to be fair.
So you know, and I'm sort of at the point, you know, I've come leaps and bounds, which is amazing. I'm not in any limits for myself.
Amazing.
But you know, I just think people put these limits in place. But to sort of go back to it, one thing that I find fascinating is the Kenyans are some of the best runners in the world.
Okay.
And they don't necessarily teach each other any techniques. There isn't like a running coach that says, put your foot in this way, lift your knee up in that way, make sure you're, you know, loading your pressure into your foot in this way. What they do is they take the really best runners, they put them in the front, they take the new guys and they put them in the back, and they send them up and down and round the track, and they run and they run and they run and run, and then they mimic each other like children. This is how children learn.
Yeah, you know,
and eventually what they do is, the couple of guys at the back that aren't as good as the guys at the front, they take the guy at the back and they put him in the middle of the pack, and he's got to keep up, and he's got to keep the same cadence, and he's got to keep the same rhythm, and he's got to get the same foot position, and eventually, before you know it, it's like a little bit of a metronome. It's like setting off 2 or 3 metronomes at once, and in the beginning they're kind of out of sync.
Yeah.
But eventually, before you know it, they're all in sync, and that's why you see these amazing bits of footage of the Kenyans running, and every stride, every cadence is the same, and it's like a dance. And it's amazing how they learn like that. No one said, go buy these special shoes and do these exercises like we do in the Western world.
Yeah.
You know, over there, they pick up the guys who haven't learned as much as the good guys. They put them together, and then they mix them in between, and they've got to mimic each other, and that's how they learn.
So when we're talking about extraordinary, we're talking about limitless, these are all big words, and you have to work really hard when you're in this mindset, this continuous improvement, this space. But the thing that gets lost often in those spaces is balance. So I know that's one of the other words which we've pulled out and gone, we need to talk about balance.
So I think for me, this is something that's often massively overlooked.
Okay.
Especially when you're a small business owner or you start your business.
Yeah. What kind of life balance do we have? Absolutely none.
So I think in the beginning everybody thinks that this is like a great idea. I'm going to go be my own boss. I'm going to have all this. I'm not going to report to anyone. I'm going to have all of this free time back. Yes. I'm going to be home every night. And in reality, you've not just took on one job. You've took on 10 jobs, because all of a sudden you're now head of finance. Yeah, you're the sales guy, you're the deliverer, you're HR, and you've got to learn to do all of the things, your marketing, your social media, your everything, and then before you know it, everything is drawn into that. And you know, we're all human beings, we all have life, and
until you become a business owner.
Yeah, and then 9 to 5 kind of goes out the window, and you know, everybody's got like, you know, a mental capacity, a mental threshold, and I think it's really important. And somebody once described it to me like this, and I have made some big changes in my life that have really helped me. And I kind of like the phrase, go slower to go faster.
Oh, okay.
And what I mean by that is, so the way that I was doing things was, I was burning the candle at both ends. I was working every single hour that there was, and I was building a business, and I was doing fantastically well. So I thought, well, these great outputs are there, I'm going to put more in. Great outputs are there, I'm going to put more in, and I was. But I wasn't actually being fulfilled. I wasn't actually getting the things that I wanted out of this that I wanted.
Yeah.
I started my own business because I wanted to make a real difference. I didn't want to feel like I was part of like a big corporate wheel with all these cogs in and I was just the number. So my own sort of self-fulfillment, I wanted that back, and I could feel like I was really helping people, being rewarded for that, because that's something we seek as humans. We want recognition, we want reward. You know, we want to have control over our, you know, what we do, what we say, how we act. That's really important. You know, I've got a little boy. He's called Leo. He's 9 years old, and I wanted to be there for him. I want to teach him all these lessons, you know, in life, and set him up for the best possible chance that he could have, and give him everything that I had and more growing up. But I found like I wasn't doing any of these things. My health was suffering. I had stopped all the sports I was playing. I'd done everything that was important to me. I kind of like went out the window. And actually what I was doing, I was going so fast. I was going so fast, I was actually going slower. So somebody actually said to me, and they described it like this. They said, imagine an old school like DJ board. You know, the one that has like the sliders on it.
Yeah.
So imagine there's like a bunch of these sliders, and each slider that you can choose to slide up and down is something. So the first one's work.
Yeah.
This is work. You can slide it all the way up. You can slide it all the way down. The second one is like family. You can slide it all the way up. You can slide it down. The third one is like health. Slide it all the way up. Slide it all the way down. The next one is like your sports, your activities, the exercise. Slide it all the way up. Slide it all the way down. And the other one's friends, visiting family members. Slide it all the way up. Slide it all the way down. You can have all of these sliders. So if you know anything about DJing, which I don't,
We'll talk about stuff we don't know about.
Other than the fact I like to go and listen to music and go to gigs and stuff, but you know, I wouldn't know where to start. But if you slid all of those things to the top, you would just blow the speakers.
Yeah.
It would just blow up.
Yeah.
Or it would make a terrible sound.
That's where burnout comes from, right?
It would just go bang,
Yeah.
wouldn't it? So you have to really learn to kind of have a balance in that. And what I was doing was I was sliding the work one all the way up. But because the work one was all the way at the top, all the other ones were like all the way at the bottom.
Yeah.
And actually, it wasn't, if you like, want of a better thing, playing a really nice sound out the speakers.
Yeah.
Because I had all the bass all the way up, but I had all the other nuances and everything all the way down.
Yeah.
So what I had to really learn was, do you know what, let's just slide that work one down a bit. So I slid the work one down a little bit, slid the family one up a little bit.
Yeah.
Purposefully make time to look after my diet, my health, my nutrition, and make sure I get good sleep.
Yeah,
And make sure I make time to go to the gym, and make sure I have an external focus. Like, I'm a physical challenge sort of person. It's really important to me. I take a lot of those things and attributes that I learned from that and I apply it to business. But I've made sure I've had a really nice balance of those. And sure, our businesses, a lot of them are seasonal. So there might be times where you might need to slide the work one up a little bit and slide the other ones down, but they kind of all like need a balance. You know, it's becoming Christmas time, New Year's and stuff like that now. You know, it makes sense to slide the work one down a little bit, slide the family ones up a little bit.
Yeah.
And take time to rest, take time for, you know, being thankful and recognition and just have this nice balance. And I really found recently, when I've done that, I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm fit and stronger than I've ever felt. I'm healthier. And because of all of these things, do you know what? That slider, 3/4 of the way up on the business, is far more efficient, far more profitable than it ever was when it was at the top.
Yes, I agree.
Because all the other things are in line. And for me, that's what getting the balance right is.
What's the difference between standing on one leg and standing on 6 legs, right? Like the load is set across.
Yeah, it was like, I always think the tripod, you know, it's really stable, there's sort of 3 points, and if you kind of lean it back onto one or the other, all of a sudden, it's very unstable very quickly.
So this all goes into sort of the capacity, what your capacity, what your performance, you know, capacity, performance, balance. These are all, they're all the kind of different sides of the same coin, right?
But this is the thing, you know, the phrase. This is like, so you feel like you feel like you're going slower, but you're going slower to go faster. Actually,
yes,
going slower to go faster. And like at the moment, I'm doing a lot of running, training for the London Marathon, and what you find is you actually do most of your training, 80% of your training, at a really slow pace because you're building time on your feet.
Okay.
You're building resilience and consistency in your ability to regulate your oxygen and your heart rate, and you only really spend 20% of your time elevated in a tempo sort of mode, and you're going slower because 80% of what you're doing is you're going slower to ultimately go faster. If you just went 80% fast all the time, you'd be injured, you would you'd burn out, you'd never be able to get that time on your feet, and you would never ever be able to learn to breathe properly or regulate. So it's about going slower to go faster. And I think as well, it's sort of building the foundations. If you want to grow and scale a business, because I always kind of relate both things.
Yeah.
Like if you want to grow and scale a business, if you decided all of a sudden I'm going to just go now and employ 20 employees, we're going to have 20 more sets of conversations, we're going to get 20 more sets of orders from each salesperson, you think, oh, that sounds great. But what happens if you did that, but you never built the infrastructure? Yeah. What happens if you were a manufacturer business, let's just say, all of a sudden you had 4,000 orders come in, but the factory never had capacity? You didn't have the production lines.
Yeah.
You couldn't get the stock, and you couldn't fulfill any of the orders. You would actually have gone way too fast and failed. You need to get that tripod, you need to get that foundation super solid, go slower to go faster.
Agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I seem to be surrounded by runners now. You know, the geek.
I think it's contagious. I certainly wasn't the first, and I certainly won't be the last. But it's I've got Sales Geek to blame for that, kind of.
I can't even. I love the thought of it, but I'm not. We've had this conversation, right?
The shoes are cool.
We're not. The shoes are cool. Yeah. I'm not built for running. I'm like. We've had this conversation.
I'm like the fridge at the back. I'm a box. I shouldn't be able
I'm the forward. I don't run.
I shouldn't be able to run, Lisa. But do you know what? Who's putting a limit on anything?
Well, we're not now, right? So going into the running thing, and with this balance, going faster to go slower. Go slower to go faster. What you do is build up like this endurance. It keeps coming back to endurance, doesn't it? So how do we learn endurance? How can you learn endurance?
So I think it goes back to like a little bit of a mindset, right? So I know we were speaking about this before, but there's some fantastic athletes that I kind of like aspire to, and I think the biggest difference between the people who really succeed and are really able to do it is they stop focusing on what that limit is, or they stop focusing on what that overall kind of goal is, and they just learn to embrace and enjoy the journey. And I think what that does for them is they actually learn to like the endurance. It's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, and at times it's going to be painful. And I kind of think you have to embrace that and learn to like it. Okay. The people that do the best, they like to endure. They've learned to like to endure. You get a pleasure from it. You know, if you relate it to exercise, you do something that's really hard, that's really tough. You set a benchmark, you endure. You go through it, you set a benchmark, you endure, you go through it. There isn't a limit, you just kind of keep going, seeing what the capabilities of the human body are. And you learn to kind of embrace that. And the people that I see like doing the best enjoy the best, and they like it as well. You know, our brain is really clever. Yes. If you do, we just want to be as efficient as we can be. It's our brain's mechanism. It's a protection mechanism. And you see this in athletes all the time. So especially when you're learning like a new technique. So I'll relate it to running because that's my focus at the moment. So you'll see a world-class marathon running athlete, somebody who's doing a marathon in 2 hours and a few minutes. You'll see them. They can run a marathon in 2 hours and a few minutes, and they run their way. They're not as efficient as they could be. They see a running coach, and the running coach says, "Oh, you just have to change this and change that, and put your arm in a different way." All of a sudden, when they do that, they're totally gassed in 5 minutes. They can't run. They can't do it because they've just changed something different, and the body doesn't like change. It likes to be in a pattern. It likes to be in a rhythm. It wants to, it doesn't want to change anything. It wants to do it that way. But if you can endure, you can be consistent with that, all of a sudden it becomes the kind of norm, and your body goes, well, actually, you know what, it's fine, and I'll regulate my heart rate, and we'll do it this way, and we'll kind of give in. Everything is like a protection mechanism, which is why we set limits in the first place. So
we don't break ourselves.
The goal isn't to break yourself. The goal is to stay uninjured, so you can do it. But you need to be able to endure, and you get some of these fantastic athletes. I know we were talking about Ross Edgley before. We know Ross Edgley. He just keeps pushing and breaking the limit. I think he was the first person to swim unaided in open water around the whole of the UK. Yeah, that's incredible. But he didn't stop there. He was like, right, what else can I do that is totally ridiculous? So I think the last one he did was a river swim in Canada, which was 500 plus kilometers long, unaided, non-stop. He swam for something like 55 hours non-stop. I mean, I don't know many people who could just stay awake for 55 hours. They might swim for 55 hours.
I don't even know how that even works, because you have to stay, staying awake for that long would be.
So what's the difference between Ross Edgley and somebody else? It's his ability to endure.
Yeah.
And it's not setting a limit. Yes, there's lots of hard work. Yes, there's lots of time. Yes, there's lots of other things that he needs to get right within that. But ultimately, it burns down to like, he's not said, "Wow, that's a really long way. It can't be done."
Yes.
There's no limit.
That C word. I was talking about the C
and
word.
he's got this incredible ability to endure.
Yeah.
And he enjoys it.
Do you think does it become addictive? Is it is it almost like you're creating this weird personality disorder?
I think if you relate it to sports, I think some of the most successful athletes in the world, the people who are truly first class in their field, have definitely some addictive kind of personality disorder. They'll have a focus on something, and all of a sudden they will be more of an expert in that in what seems like 5 minutes than someone who studied it their whole life, because it just becomes an obsession.
Well, it's a field of fascination. It's like it's that love for something. I think that my favourite film in the whole world says that love is passion, obsession, something you can't do without. And I think falling in love with what you do, falling in love with the business, falling in love with yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, it feels to me like it's a love driven thing. It's something which is extraordinary. Going back to how to be extraordinary. So, talk to me about that. Why did you? Because obviously, when I come along and say, what do you want to talk about? I want to talk about being extraordinary. What drew you to that? Is it just your mindset and your state of being and the way you're living at the moment? Or?
I think again, talking about the limits of what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I think the general view from what I've heard and my experience and what I understand is extraordinary is almost impossible apart from a select few. Unless you're an Olympic athlete, a world-class professional sportsman, then you're extraordinary. Extraordinary is put on this like pedestal where it's like so far away, it's almost unachievable, and people say there's like unrealistic targets or
so that point is unachievable. So they taught themselves out of it, right?
So how hard is it, to be extraordinary? You can't be extraordinary. There's only so many extraordinary people in the world that do this in business or whatever. Big massive entrepreneurs that have done completely life-changing things that sort of changed the world. It's extraordinary seems sometimes so far away. So I don't really like to think about it like that. That way, I think extraordinary is achievable for anybody, because I think extraordinary comes from all the things we've spoken about: not setting limits, the ability to endure, being consistent. So I go to the gym, and if you went to the gym and you were in a gym goer and you walked in the gym and you saw someone that was in incredible shape, you go, that's extraordinary. And it's not. It's not extraordinary, because what's extraordinary is that person has turned up to the gym every single day.
Yes.
Again and again and again and again. They've done the same exercises again and again and again consistently. They've gone home, they've ate properly, they've slept properly, they've recovered properly, they've gone back to the gym, they've evolved, they've tweaked, they've done it again and again and again. And they've not just done it for 1 month, 2 months, 12 months, 24 months. They've done it day after day, again, for 10 years.
Yep, it's paying a price.
And the act of doing it again and again and being consistent and not setting limits, that's extraordinary. And all of a sudden, that makes extraordinary possible for anybody.
For anyone. So if you look at the word extraordinary, if you break it down, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Because actually, we're doing ordinary things, but we're doing it consistency. And it's almost like we just have to be ordinary, doing the ordinary things more often, right? Yeah. So it's almost like the word explains itself. Yeah. To be extraordinary, you just need to do the ordinary things consistently, committed, paying the price, enduring these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like, but it is that doing the small things that you need to do consistently, and that consistency is king. So I know it's something that we talked about. What is the role in consistency to being extraordinary? Is it just that, or is there more to it than that?
I think having the right mindset, building the resilience, dropping your guard, not being scared to fail, not being, hijacked by what other people think. Am I going to make a fool of myself? All these things that helps us put a guard up. You can be.
Yeah.
The mind is like such a powerful thing. You can be the most practiced athlete in the world. You can practice your pitch and presentation in the mirror over and over again. You can record yourself. You can watch it back and you can think that is awesome. And on the day, you might trip and fall on your face.
Yeah.
And it can hijack you in that last second, in that last moment. So I think by doing those consistent things and then doing them well and following those steps, that really helps you be extraordinary. That helps you be more consistent, and that mindset helps you kind of not be hijacked in those moments. If you break it down and simplify it, and stop putting those big things on a pedestal, stop setting it as this big limit. It doesn't necessarily exist. If you're trying to break things down into smaller bite-sized things, learn from the Sir Dave Brailsford marginal gains, the 1% factor. Why don't we let's really focus on doing these few things just that little bit better. Let's be consistent at them. All of a sudden, over a period of time, that I explained when you were trying to be extraordinary, all of a sudden you're like a little bit better. When you're chasing down a pace time in running, all of a sudden, when it used to take you an hour to run 5k, you're now doing 5k in under 20 minutes. All of a sudden you were thinking, but when you set out to run that 5k and it took an hour, you thought, how am I ever going to do this?
I've tried. I'm still trying to get my head around all of that. I'm going to need to be taking all of this in and taking all of this in.
But you once thought, that was like so far out there. It was, that was the moon away.
Yeah.
And there's no way you could have got there. And then all of a sudden, if you just kind of go, what can I do now? Can I take that next step in front of me? Yes, I can. Okay. Can I do that consistently? Yes, you can. And then, before you know it, the famous Sir Dave Brailsford thing, you look back and you took quite a few steps.
Yes.
And you go, actually,
you look back and go, look how far I've come.
Like quite a way. Yeah. And I think, if you sit into that with good consistency, the ability to endure, have fun in the process, in the journey, stop worrying about the end result. If you worry about the end result, that's when you're going to get hijacked. How many world-class professional golfers on TV do you see coming down the 18th hole, and all of a sudden they look down at their scorecard and they go, do you know what, if I just par this hole, I am gonna win.
No quick fix.
I am gonna win the Masters, right?
Yeah.
How many times have they birdied that hole, never mind parred that hole, but because they looked at their scorecard and they realised what was at stake, they've gone in and they've gone in the water.
Yes.
It's hijacked them at that last second, at that last moment.
And do it ourselves, right?
We do that all the time. It's
yes.
If you can just kind of forget what the end result's going to be, focus on those things, really, really enjoy that ability to endure, stay in the moment, enjoy those things that you're doing. Along the way, there'll be, be open to it. There'll be setbacks. You'll get injured. You'll lose a deal. Client's not going to be happy with you. But you know what? Someone's going to be really happy with you, leave you an amazing testimonial that'll lead to a new opportunity.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're going to get in a good place of fitness and you're going to set a new time. You'll have different thresholds, different benchmarks, and just stay in there and have that ability. Do the things you can control. You can control consistency.
Yes.
You can control being extraordinary.
Yeah.
And if you embrace that and you enjoy it and you have a really good relationship with yourself where you can let your guard down, be empathetic,
trust
break
yourself.
These limits that seem to just kind of hang in the balance and exist, and have a limitless mindset. All of a sudden, what could you achieve then?
Mic drop. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Our time has gone so fast. It's been ridiculous. And what I do at the end of these wonderful things with the fantastic guests that I have is I ask them two what I call fluffy questions to finish things up. And the first one is, what's your best piece of advice around what we've spoken about today? It's the best piece of advice you can give out there.
Really work on having a great relationship with yourself. Until you have a great relationship with yourself, you can't have a great relationship with anyone else. I think if you really work hard on yourself,
yep,
and you understand yourself and you're in a good place with yourself, then you're in a good place to be able to share yourself with others.
Amazing.
I think that is something that I think about every single day. And I think in order to do that, you need to remove those limits, show some vulnerability, and let those natural guards down.
Yeah, it's not a war attraction. That law of attraction is this whole thing about letting your guard down. And I've always been very, very tough. But the second I've let that go, let my protection go, and just kind of gone, I'm strong enough to do this. That's the time when you truly know you're strong. Vulnerability is strength, because doesn't matter. You don't need to put those walls up. Doesn't matter, because you're strong enough to endure all of the things that have got coming your way. Brilliant advice. So the next one is, who is your brain candy hero? Who is your go-to? Who's inspired you?
So for me, this is changeable, and it changes all the time, because I just kind of get drawn into certain people from where I'm kind of at in the moment. Mm-hmm. So we mentioned Ross Edgley before, and I just think he's absolutely phenomenal in breaking limits and setting new boundaries. The ability that he has to endure is like no other. He comes up with the most ridiculous things you've ever thought of. No idea where he's even thought of it from. But he doesn't give up. He sets out and achieves it. He fails miserably sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's harsh. Not miserably. He talks about his failures open, in such a vulnerable way. But the things that he has achieved are truly extraordinary. He is incredible. So I always think if he's gone and done something like that, there is literally no limits to that. Another person that I think's quite inspiring for me at the moment, he is an ex-professional rugby player who's turned kind of hybrid athlete. And he's also got a fantastic business model in the fitness industry. He's also got a great podcast, and he's called Ollie Machin. He's got his own sort of sports supplements nutrition brand, and I just like the level of detail he goes into, and I just like what a well-rounded individual that he seems to be. And then another thing as well, I like achievement. I like winners, if you like, and Mr. McIntyre, who's considered not the comedian Mr. McIntyre.
Hunter McIntyre.
Hunter McIntyre. Yeah. He is considered the fastest man on earth, and I think that's incredible. He's the fastest man on earth across so many disciplines. He's set more speed world records around in the sporting world than anybody else. Over the past 10 years, he's got something like 6 to 8 world speed record titles in completing really hard physical fitness challenges, but in the fastest time. Wow. And again, if you've somebody that's done that, you've clearly not set yourself any limits, or you've ignored all limits.
You just completely ignored and blinkered to those sort of things. Brilliant. Thank you so much for all of that amazing geeky gold. I'm sure that the watchers and listeners will get a huge amount out of it. And thank you so much for being part of this.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Lisa.
Your thoughts. Thank you for listening and watching our Geek Chic, our podcast created for you because intelligent conversation never goes out of style. Your chosen place for business brain candy. We hope you have enjoyed this conversation. Please remember to give us a thumbs up, a follow, a like, a share, subscribe, all of those things. Tell all of your friends, comment, give us feedback, and we hope you've enjoyed our little production. It is brought to you in conjunction with Sales Geek Essex and DMB Films, the home for professional podcast filming. This is Lisa from Sales Geek, wishing you all wisdom and wellness. Until next time.